Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiro Banachari Jamuna Tiro Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiro Banachari Yamuna Tiro Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Sabridharacharyya Sakarya Smadhi Nam Saraswati Swami Jaya Nanda Gori Vaishnava Ki Jaya Ramacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jaya Prem Sutta Hosi Krishna Prem Radha Suracharya Gaur Bhakti Jaya Sri Radha Krishna Bhogavna Sam Kanda Radha Kanda Giri Ki Jaya Vrindavan Dham Ki Jaya नवदीप धाम की जाए गंगा माँ की जाए यमुना माँ की जाए गुरु द्वारका धाम की जाए स्वामी तो भक्तवृंद की जाए ऑल ग्लोरी टू दैट ऑल ग्लोरी टू दैट थैंक यू वेरी मच
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
It's Saturday morning, 10th of July, 6 o'clock, 5 minutes. Thank you for joining the class early in the morning. We'll continue our discussion on Bhagavad Gita as it is. We are at chapter 4, titled Transcendental Knowledge. Reconvening after 2 weeks because of long weekend. And we completed through verse number 7. So a quick summary. The first 7 verses, the conversation begins with Krishna giving some history about the Vedic knowledge that he had spoken millions of years ago to the sun god. And then he mentions that how this disciplic succession was broken over a period of time, which pretty much happens with all the traditions of the world. And he's telling Arjuna that he is going to re-establish this lost chain by starting a new chain of the same knowledge, Arjuna being the very first student. To which Arjuna inquires that how is he to understand that Krishna, who is of same age as him, could have instructed this knowledge to sun god, who is much more ancient, uh, and I mean of much longer lifespan as well. To which Krishna replies, of course, Arjuna knows this, but he's asking this question on behalf of others because Krishna is saying this is a new parampara, right? So it's not that this knowledge is only meant for Arjuna. Krishna is saying it's a new parampara beginning with you. And so Arjuna, being the first student of this new parampara on the behalf of others, is asking the question to so that Krishna unequivocally establish his position. So far, Krishna hasn't, right? Because uh, the nature of great personalities is that they don't, you know, talk about their greatness. But here, Arjuna is explicitly wanting to establish that Krishna is not an ordinary living entity. So, to which Krishna replies that, well, you and me both had many births. You do not remember them, but I remember them all. So that is a difference. And then he goes on to say is that, well, though I am unborn, Krishna does not take birth like we do, uh, and his body never deteriorates. And he is the Lord of all living entities. So he is unique, right? And he is the father of all living entities. But he still appears every millennium in his original transcendental form. So we discussed that once in a day of Brahma, Krishna appears in his original form. And then other instances, it's basically his expansions or expansions of the expansions appear to re-establish religion, which has deteriorated, and there is a rise in irreligion. Specifically, during at those instances, Krishna appears either in his original form, that is once in a day of Brahma, millennium after millennium. He, and for two reasons he appears, right? To deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants or the impious. So that's today's verse, the second part of, you just discussed that Krishna appears whenever there is rise in irreligion. And then once he appears, what does he do, right? So that's the second part. So we'll continue with text 8. परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. In the purport, Sri Prabhupada mentioned that according to Bhagavad Gita, a holy man, a sadhu, is someone who is fixed in Krishna consciousness, whose mind is surcharged with not material thoughts, but thoughts about Krishna. A person may appear to be religious by his external activity. Sometimes we cannot understand the nature of a transcendental person. But if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness, wholly and fully he is to be understood to be a sadhu. So, when you think of an example where a personality by external acts might seem to be irreligious, but based on consciousness, that person, we can, those who have that discrimination can determine that this person is actually sadhu, well placed. So here irreligious means maybe you can say not following the injunctions of Vedic scriptures. One could be grossly irreligious, or that means committing what might appear as sinful activities. But the other meaning of irreligious is just not following dharma, right? So if you think example of Jad Bharat, he, when in his third birth, when he was born as a son of a Brahmana, he, by the mercy of Krishna, he was able to recall his previous births. The previous births, specifically in the body of the deer, and before that, as Bharat Maharaj, the king of Bharatvarsha. And he had making this determination that he is in his third life, he's going to perfect his life, and not get entangled in various material activities. So though he was the most intelligent, he acted like dumb and a deaf person. And his father, being a Brahmana, it's like any father would like to impart the Vedic culture and dharma to their children. But what did Jadabharat do? Whatever his father taught him, he would not follow. He would do exact opposite, like basic things like cleanliness, um, for instance. But he would purposefully remain unclean. That doesn't mean he's a madman and uncivilized, though it might appear that this person is adharmic. But his consciousness was always fixed on Krishna, on Paramatma. And what he thought that, well, if I act like a normal person, then the expectation from my father would be to go through material education. Of course, in son of a Brahmana, even it's not the kind of material education that we have. But even if you become a pandit, then you will be later expected to get married, and then he will have a family, then he'll get entangled into more implications. He said, I don't want any of this. So everyone thinks I am a stupid, dumb, and deaf, then they won't bother me trying to educate me, trying to have the same expectation that the society has from an individual. So in this way, he always remained Krishna conscious, and for that person, he acted apparently against the principles of religion. So, right, so basically the four legs of dharma, right, which is austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. So that is a sadhu. So you cannot always make out exceptional personality. That doesn't mean anyone who is crazy and acting weirdly is a sadhu. The reverse is not, or the converse is not true. But sometimes, sadhu might purposefully act in a way that people cannot identify their real identity. They purposefully want to cover their real identity. The opposite of sadhu is a duskrita. Duskrita is purposefully engaging, just like sadhu might sometimes purposefully engage, in an apparently irreligious activities just to cover their real identity. But the real duskritam, they are not acting in the way that a sadhu is trying to cover himself, but they are acting in forbidden activities because they don't have sense control. They are impelled by their desires, and then that's why they are engaging in those lower activities. So they do not care for Krishna consciousness. They're exact opposites. So such miscreants or duskritams are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind. Lowest of mankind because they are acting in animal propensities, which is not at all suitable for human beings. So what is the difference between human beings and animals, right? There are four things which are common. In the Mahabharata, we find this verse, right? How does it go? Ahara nidra bhai maithuna cha samana pasubhi cha narana dharma hi adhiko vishesho dharmena vinah pasu hi saman. right? So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, these four activities are common between humans and animals. What is different? Hmm. So the difference is the ability to inquire into absolute truth. Athatho brahma jigyasu. Why I am here? What is the purpose of life? And one who comes to that questioning, then that human life is successful. Otherwise, what is the difference? Nothing common. They are primarily engaged. Any activities in this world that we see can be grouped into this four: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. For those four reasons, everyone is engaging. But one might do it in a sophisticated way compared to animals. Animals are also doing the same four things. They are eating, they are mating, defending, they are sleeping. The humans might do it in a sophisticated way that does not make them any better. One might be polished animals. That's another word. Or the Shastras, they say Dvipada Pashuhu. They are two-legged, but two-legged animals. Like most animals, they are four-legged, right? Now the apes also, we can say maybe they are two-legged, but they also walk on their hands. It's kind of they use sometimes their arms almost as if like running on four legs, including monkeys. So that two-legged animal does not serve the purpose. Like eating, we might eat in a sophisticated restaurant with fancy cutlery. Uh, the animals might be eating out in the wild, in the open. So it's just a polished way of doing the same activity. Same thing sleeping. One might sleep in a multi-million-dollar home with fancy bedstead and uh, silken bedding, but and the animals are also doing the same thing, but they don't have that sophistication. Same thing, mating, defending. We might have ballistic missiles or drones or nuclear weapons, but the what is the underlying propensity is the same animalistic propensity to defend my territory. It's like the dogs, they start barking mm, as soon as some other dog, especially where there are stray dogs, right? We see, or even those who are pet dogs, we see over here the owners, they go out on a walk, and then one dog sees another one and they start barking. Why are you here? Why are you entering my territory? Kind of thing, right? So the propensity is still the same and does not make us any better. So the Duskritams, who do not have any higher purpose, they are the lowest of all mankind. They are foolish because apparently they have a sophisticated intelligence, but then they have never asked the real questions of life. Who am I? What is the purpose of life? What happened after I die? They never tried to solve the real problems of life: birth, old age, disease, death. And so they are foolish. Though they might be decorated with mundane education, sophisticated, they might have sophisticated degrees, PhD, postdoc. They might have written books, volumes of books and theses, but their education is useless. At the time of death, they cannot save them. They are implicated in their karma. But on the other hand, the same example, Jada Bharat, he did not even go what is called Vedic education. From a worldly perspective, he was an illiterate, dumb and deaf. But later in his life, when we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, he engages in the conversation with Maharaj Rahugana, who also thought that this person is well built, but he is almost like an animal. He's doesn't is not intelligent, and so he forcefully engaged him in carrying his palanquin. And later on, Bharat, he was, because of higher consciousness, when he was carrying the palanquin, he was careful he doesn't step on the ends, and so it created friction in the sense that it created jerks. The Maharaj Ravuguna gets angry, and then he satirically says that, oh, you are because he's strong and he can lift, but he thought that maybe he's not paying attention. So he's saying, "Oh, you're such a weakling." He satirically, basically, insinuates him. Bharat does not mind it, and eventually, when the king continues to comment on it, then but apparently, at least for Srimad Bhagavatam, seems he first time speaks something, and just by few words, Maharaj Raghunath realizes this is not an ordinary person. Must be a self-realized soul. Immediately comes out of his palanquin and asks for forgiveness. So, from an external perspective, he did not have any education, and when somebody looks at him, that's how he appears. And so, but as soon as he speaks, one knows. Yeah, you can ascertain the position of that person. So similarly, we have experienced in our lives also. Sometimes we meet people and we might be, their looks could be deceptive, right? So we have certain impression looking at them, right? Uh, or somebody might look very smart and intelligent, but when they speak, one can figure out that this person is a fool. Similarly, from an external perspective, somebody might look um, like a dumb person, but when they speak, you can realize that this person is an intelligent person with wisdom. So, um, so yeah, looks could be deceptive, and it's not how many degrees one has accumulated. As soon as one speaks, one can ascertain the real position. So yes. On the other hand, a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu. Sadhu literally means a good man, a good character. Uh, he practices. He has not just theoretical knowledge, but he has put that knowledge in one's practice. Such a person, even though he might neither be learned nor well cultured, right? So Jadbharat, again, perfect example. He did not go through mundane education or material education, even karma kanda, or even learned, whether it's material or spiritual, right? He did not go through a formal education, despite of being born in a family of a brahmana who are eligible and have right to that education. And he purposefully acted in an uncultured way. So he was not, nor was he well cultured from that perspective. But as far as the atheists are concerned, those who are atheistic, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with demons, Raman and Kamsa. So one might say, oh, these demons are very powerful. The Lord has to appear to kill them, because here Krishna says he appears for two reasons: to deliver those who are pious and then destroy those who are miscreants. So it's not that God, Krishna requires to come personally because they are so powerful. And Krishna, just by desire, just by his willing, he thinks that these people, his miscreants, have to be destroyed. They would immediately be destroyed. He could send any of his empowered devotees, like Parshuram. Is considered as an incarnation of Vishnu, but he's not Vishnu Tattva, he's Jiva Tattva. He's a soul who was empowered by Vishnu to annihilate all the miscreants. Right? So he's Satya Avesh Avatar. There are different avatars. There are those which are Amsa Avatar, that means it's a Vishnu Tattva, could be potency, a partial potency of Vishnu manifested in an incarnation. Satya always means, and in that sense, they fall in the Vishnu category, but they don't. That incarnation might not fully manifest all the potency of Vishnu. For instance, if you take Matsya incarnation, first of all, it's the form of a fish. Is non different from Vishnu, but again, the all the potencies, and especially because the form is different. Like Vishnu is manifesting Sankha Chakra Gada Padma, but when he appears as a fish, he's not holding Sankha Chakra Gada Padma. And so those paraphernalia, they are part of his potencies, and so some of the potencies might not be fully manifested, but he's still Vishnu. On the other hand, Parshuram, he's a jiva, like a soul like us, but he was empowered by Krishna to appear for a specific purpose, to annihilate all the corrupted Kshatriyas classes, which was an overburden to Mother Earth. So the point being, as the Lord does not need to personally appear in his original form as Krishna or Rama to destroy the miscreants. Krishna did appear to kill Kamsa. Rama did appear to and kill Ravana, but he did not. um that is his pastime. Sometimes the Lord also feels that the spirit, that combative spirit, but who will fight with the Lord? Everyone who knows, oh, Krishna is supreme, no one will fight. So the strongest of all demons, like Ravana and Kamsa, actually uh, they're devotees, but they are made to forget that they are devotees, and they appear in this world in the mentality of demons, so they can have a real fight. Otherwise, if they still recall that they are devotees of the Lord, then the fight is not real. So Jai and Vijay were the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. They committed an offense, apparent offense, by the arrangement of the Lord. That pastime appeared, where the four Kumaras, when they were trying to enter Vaikuntha, they stopped. Now they are gatekeepers. That's what their duty is, to check, right? Whoever is coming, as this person eligible, is a resident of Vaikuntha Loka. So the four Kumaras from this material world, they ventured, and when they were stopped, the four Kumaras became angry. He says, "You, why did you stop us? I mean, who except liberated souls can even come so close to Vaikuntha? And because you don't have that mentality of making distinction who is eligible and not, we curse you." And so Vishnu, he knows, and he says, well, you have two choices. You appear as devotees in the material world, you fall down to material world, and take 7 births, or you take 3 births as demons. So that is a story. So first they appear as Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaks, right? And then Ravana, Kumkarna, and then you have Kamsa and Dantavakra, right? So yeah. So the Lord feels that combative spirit, and so in this regard, he is coming to perform that pastime with his devotees. But otherwise, he does not have any need. So we should not think that, hey, unless the Lord personally comes, this cannot be achieved. Just by his thinking and desiring, the miscreants can be destroyed. So Lord has many agents. He were quite competent to vanquish the demons, or he could send his empowered personalities like Parshuram. But the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees. So when he comes in person, he gives pleasure to his devotees. You get a chance to um, uh, have personal association of Krishna. Mm. So these devotees might also be harassed by demons. Of course, they are not affected or bothered by it, just like Prahlad Maharaj. He was always harassed by his father, uh, Hiranyakashipu, but it didn't affect him. He was transcendently situated. Nevertheless, the Lord appeared as Narsimhadev to give pleasure to Prahlad. That's why he sing the song Prahlad Ahlad Daine. So Prahlad, the root word is Lad, Ahlad, Ladini Sakti, Radharani, pleasure giving potency. So Prahlad is one who gives pleasure to others, and Ahlad is pleasure. So Narsingadev appeared to give pleasure to Prahlad, and Prahlad literally means who gives pleasure to others. But the Lord is giving pleasure to Prahlad, which literally means one who is a giver of pleasure. So it's kind of a alankar in a poetic way. It's a beautiful line in that song. The Lord appears to give pleasure to his devotees. Prahlad Ahlad Daine. So the demon, they can be so demoniac that they might even bother their own relatives, their own family members. Although Prahlad Maharaj was son of Hiranyakashipu, his father still harassed him. He was persecuted by his own father. Similarly, Devaki, the mother of Krishna, she was a sister of Kamsa. So she and her husband both were persecuted by Kamsa just because Krishna was one of them. So Lord appears primarily to appeared in his original form to deliver Devaki and kill Kamsa. Both activities were performed simultaneously, just in one act. Therefore, it is said here that to deliver the devotee and vanquish the demon, miscreant, the Lord appears in different incarnations. Of course, there are many descriptions over here, so we'll go through them. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has recited, composed these verses from Madhya Leela, chapter 20. So, the essence of these verses is, let's see, you can recite this. Srishti hetu ye murti prapanche avtare se ishvara murti avatar nam dhare मायातीत प्रयव्योमे शबर अवस्थान विश्वे अवतारी धरे अवतार नाम. It's a beautiful verse, Bengali. सृष्टि हेतु ये मूर्ति प्रपंचे अवतारे से ईश्वर मूर्ति अवतार नाम धरे. The avatar or the incarnation of Godhead descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. And the particular form of the personality of Godhead who descends is called an incarnation. So here in English, we are using the word incarnation, but the original word is avatar. So avatar literally means one who descends. Aroha, avroha. Aroha is to rise up. Avroha, right? And avroha means to come down. So avatar means one who comes down to the material world from the spiritual world, to make that distinction. And the incarnation it's kind of an equivalent, but it's a different meaning. Here the word incarnation literally doesn't mean one who comes down in that sense, but it's in a different sense. When Krishna comes down, he comes in his original form, but from an external perspective, it appears that he has the same form as us, which is full of, which is a material body in flesh and blood, right? So it comes from that ideology, maybe from Abrahamic traditions, where they describe Jesus appearing in blood and flesh. So carnal means flesh, right? Just we say carnivorous, that means the animals who consume flesh. So incarnation means assuming the form of or assuming a body which is made up of blood and flesh. So when you take it literally, it might convey wrong ideas. It doesn't mean when Krishna comes, he's assuming a body of blood and flesh like we do. Now, of course, if you see, Krishna was being attacked by a volley of arrows during Mahabharat war, and when the arrows pierced, the blood would come out from his Krishna's body as well. And so when we look at it, it appears that he has the same body, right? Because blood is oozing from his body. His body made up of flesh and blood. And so in that sense, it's incarnation, meaning that apparently it's like that, but doesn't it's not the same as us, so there is a distinction. Um, so yeah, here incarnation, that the Lord does not have a material body, but it appears that he is assuming a material body. Of course, he's coming in the original spiritual form. So is it in literal meaning, when you look at the word avatar or incarnation, it is a different concept. Avatar is the focusing on the aspect of Lord coming down. Incarnation, on the other hand, focuses on the connotation that one assumes a body of flesh and blood, um, which is not true, right? But see, English is not a perfect language, and you could come up with another word in English for avatar, and there is none, right? If you look at English knowledge, they don't have the concept of someone descending down to this material world. And so, what is the other equivalent they can use? And so, they are using the word incarnation. Um, Okay, so such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God, and when they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. They're coming down, but they're coming down in his original form. And so there are different kind of incarnation. Purusha avatars. The Purusha literally means the controller or the enjoyer. And so in this material world, we see, the material world was created by Mahavishnu as he's breathing, lying in the Karanodakshai ocean, and he's breathing all the bubbles that manifest. Each of those bubbles turns into a material world. So Purusha there is only one Purusha, who is that Vishnu, Krishna. He's the original enjoyer. Purusha literally means the controller, the enjoyer. We are all Prakriti. Later in Bhagavad Gita, we will learn that the soul, the material energy is also Krishna energy, the gross matter, the dull matter, and the living entity is also his energy, but a superior energy. The dull matter is an inferior energy, but both are energy of Krishna or Vishnu, uh, who is the energetic and he is the enjoyer. So Purusha refers to various multifarious Vishnu incarnation, right? Uh, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Anirudh, the Chaturvyuha, those are the Purushas. Guna avatars are basically avatars of the Lord which embody certain modes of material nature, Sattva, Rajas, Tama. So Brahma is a mode of passion. Is the creator, secondary creator. Primary creator is again Vishnu, Mahavishnu. And then Vishnu is a mode of goodness. He is the maintainer of the universe, and Shiva is the lord of the mode of ignorance. There is a distinction. That means the mode of ignorance is under his control. It is not that he is affected uh, in the same way as an ordinary person is affected. So these are guna avatars, where the Lord, again they are empowered. Though Brahma is a jiva tattva, right? Brahma is a living entity, is not same as Vishnu tattva, or not even same as Shiva tattva. Shiva tattva is a completely different category. But these are all their personalities who are in charge of those modes of nature, and then they take up their respective duties in this material world of creation, maintenance, and distraction. Those are the guna avatars. Leela avatars are the avatars of the Lord, where the Lord appears specifically for performing the pastimes, right? Matsya Kurma, Varaha, right? These are all the different leelas. Sakti Aves avatar, that means a living entity who is empowered to perform certain activity, like Parshuram. He's a living entity, a jiva, but he was empowered for the specific purpose of destroying the Kshatriyas who were corrupt, right? Then Manvantar. So in each reign of Manu, in one day of Brahma, we learned that there are 14 Manus. Each Manu has a reign of 71 Chaturyugas. Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali is one Chaturyug. When they repeated 71 times, that's the reign of one Manu. And there are 14 Manus in a day of Brahma. And so each time the Manu changes, the Lord also appears in that particular reign. And so those are Manvantara avatars. So we might see, you can think of a particular one. Yeah, many times, like some of the Leela avatars also, for instance, Matsya. So when the reign of one Manu changed, so at the end of the reign of what was the Manu? So beginning of the current Manu, Vaivasvat Manu, reign of Vaivasvat Manu. And so Lord appeared in the form of Matsya, right? So, that is an incarnation that again coincides with the change of the reign of Manu. So there are Manvantars. And then Yuga avatars. In each Yuga, the Lord also appears. Like in Kali Yuga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. In the Satyuga, there was a Hamsa incarnation, Lord appearing as a swan. In Treta Yuga, we had Yagya, Lord appearing as Yagya Purush, right? So in different yugas also the Lord appears. So in this way, there are different classifications in terms of how those incarnations are classified. But who is the original form? Well, original form is Krishna. Well, how do we know? Well, Srimad Bhagavatam confirms that. It says, Ete chamsa kalau pumsha Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridyanti Yuge Yuge. So, Ete cha amsha, all these incarnations, right? We talked about Purusha Avatar, Guna Avatar, Lila Avatar, Shakti Avesh, Manvantar, Yuga Avatars. So, different incarnations, they're all either expansions of the Lord or expansions of the expansion of the Lord. Ete cha amsa kalau pumsha. Kala with full potency. Well, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, but Krishna is the original Bhagavan. Swayam. Swayam means himself in his original form. And Bhagavan means one is fully opulent in six potencies. What are six potencies in which the Lord is opulent? We discussed this in the past. Aishwarasya, Shamagrasya, Virasya, Yasha, Shri, Jnana, Vairagya. So Aishwarya is opulence, Vira, strength, Yashaha, fame, Shriya, beauty, and then Gyan Vairagya is knowledge and renunciation. So I think we discussed this earlier in much more detail how the Lord is the supreme in all the six aspects. So Bhagavan, so sometimes the word Bhagavan is used for other personalities other than Krishna. But the word Bhagavan is specifically is used sometimes for powerful personalities, but in true sense, Bhaga, Vana. So Bhaga is potency, and one who is superlative in all these potencies. That means no one is equal, better or equal than him in all the six bhagas or the potencies is considered as Bhagavan. And so if you analyze it, one can conclude that no one else except Krishna has the six potencies in the superlative, in the most superlative way. So Krishna is the primeval Lord and he is the source or the fountainhead of all the avatars. As confirmed in that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that we just recited. So Lord Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of pure devotees who are very anxious to him in his original Vrindavan, very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. So that once in the day of Brahma, Krishna comes in his original form, and the devotees, they get an opportunity to experience his pastimes in Golok Vrindavan on this earthly plane. Therefore, the prime purpose of Krishna's avatar is to satisfy his devotees. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. So Yuga Avatar, we mentioned about Yuga Avatar earlier. So the Yuga, Kali Yuga, the Yuga Avatar is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what is the Yuga Dharma? Well, Yuga Dharma is congregational chanting of the holy names, Sankirtana. Kirtan means glorification, Sankirtana means together, some complete. So this congregational chanting of the holy names was started by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Krishna himself in the mood and complexion of Radharani when he appeared in Bengal 550 years ago approximately. So he predicted that this culture of Sankirtana would be broadcasted all over the world, from town to town, village to village. So this famous verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prithvi te aache nagaradi gram sarvatra prachar hoibe murunam. So whatever towns and villages of this world there are, in all those towns and villages, my holy name would be propagated. So that's a prediction Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had made. Srila Prabhupada fulfilled that prediction when he came to the 60s, first to America, and then he traveled all over the world 14 times, establishing more than 108 temples and bringing congregational chanting of the holy names of Krishna to major cities and towns all over the world. And then his disciples and followers have continued to do that since then. So Lord Chaitanya is the incarnation of Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So this is described. Now somebody might say, well, how do we know? And you've heard, I mean, some people would have heard of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he was the most renowned and the personality just like Tukaram and other saints, but mostly, people might know him as a saint. But how do we know he is Krishna? And there are many references in Upanishads, Mahabharata, Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam also, there is a verse which says, well, in Kali Yuga, those who are intelligent will take shelter to take up to the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. They will take up that Yuga Dharma, and the Lord will appear in the yellow complexion. And so yellow in the sense that golden, bright gold, just like Radharani has a golden complexion. Gaura, just like in India, we have this name Gauranga, Gaurangi. Gaurangi is also name of Radharani, golden. So Gaura is golden, bright complexion. So there are other verses in Upanishads and Mahabharata. We might have discussed some of this in the past. I think more reference will come. I'll try to share that offline. Kali Sankarana Upanishad, there is a reference about chanting of the Maha Mantra, other places also. So in this way, when the references are available in the scriptures, they're very specific in the sense they would say, well, what is the nature of the incarnation? What are the physical attributes of the personality? For what purpose they will appear? Sometimes there's a reference to the parents, the name of the parents as well, right? So just like Srimad Bhagavatam, we see it was written 5,000 years ago. And then at the time, Lord Buddha had not appeared, but we find in Bhagavatam there is a prediction. So in that particular chapter, all the incarnations have been described in the past tense. Well, this appeared, this appeared, this appeared. And then say in future, the Lord is appear as Buddha. It says Buddha Namna Anjana Suta is the name of the mother, would be Anjana. Ki Kateshu Bhavishyati, in future. Ki Kateshu. Ki Kateshu is a province, right, in northern India, close to Bihar, present day Bihar. So Buddho Namna Anjana Suta Ki Kateshu Bhavishyati, right? So the descriptions are very specific. When the Lord will appear, where he will appear, Ki Kateshu, name of the places described. And as the name of the parents are described, physical characteristics are described. And then all scriptures, except when an empowered personality, Vishnu Tattva, appears, you will see, there are marks on their body, which like no normal person would have. Like if you look at the feet of Krishna, there's a description to the what kind of marks, like thunderbolt, a flag, a conch shell, a chakra. And in the scripture, the description is there to, so there's all these transcendental marks are described. And to the extent that all those marks are present, sometimes only 50%, 70%, 80% of the marks might be there. To that extent, we can realize if how empowered this personality is. Is it partial, fully full manifestation? And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he appeared, we could see all those transcendental marks. They were present on his the sole of his feet to the full potency, right? So it's non different than Krishna. So in this way, you cannot manufacture this, right? I mean, it's there. Just like we see Saligram Shila, they also have so many different forms. You can see it appears as in the Ugra Narsingha Saligram Shila. You have sharp teeth, for instance. And if you open the in the inside the Shila, you'll see intricate designs, right? And there is this Vajra Kantha, a worm or an insect with a teeth as strong as Vajra. It can carve the stone. And it says the Lord himself appears in that form of the insect and carves the stones. They're not found anywhere else except the Gandaki River in Nepal. So it's not, this cannot be engineered, all these marks, right? So in this way, there are different ways, scriptural references, descriptions, and then physical manifestations which confirm those descriptions, by which we can confirm if a personality is an incarnation or Supreme Personality of Godhead himself or not. Okay, so that was a long purport, very important, because it describes, an opportunity for us to have the Lord has nothing to do with this material world, but he specifically appears. And so why he appears, for what purpose, when he appears, how do we identify them? Unless we have that understanding, uh, you know we could be deluded. Sometimes people considered as God those who are definitely not God. And on the other hand, when there is an empowered personality, they don't identify them. They are not able to recognize. And so it's a science, and one has to understand. Yes, Krishna is directly explaining it himself. Okay, let me take a pause. Any questions or comments on verse number 8 before we proceed?
No question, Prabhuji. It was actually a very nice verse. Thank you for the explanation. I had like a experience with like talking to someone about this, and they were asking questions around like how do we, why, like the earlier part of the purport here, that why does God need to come down and do all these things? Why can't I just know that He's God? Or why can't, like you were saying, why can't if he's a god, why does he have to come down and show all these things?
Right.
So we are having a long discussion, but he was not, I mean, obviously having a debate. But one point that I happened to make at that time, which actually convinced him, was like, he's a big cricket fan.
Mhm.
So I was telling him that, if someone just comes and tells you that Sachin Tendulkar or Virat Kohli are the best cricketers ever, will we just accept it like that? Unless they keep doing what they do, like, hit centuries or hit boundaries or hit the bowlers out of the park, you and I will not be able to say, okay, yeah, we will not be overawed by their talent. So similarly, if just God says that I am the God, just worship me, we will not be able to have the same kind of feeling till we experience some things like his avatars. Or so that
Right.
point made it very clear for him. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
share
it's
that.
another good point, right? How do we know? Well, why his transcendental activities, his supernormal
Yeah.
activities, right? That's another way one can confirm. It's a very valid point. Okay. Anything else? Anyone? We'll continue on to the next verse number 9. It's also very important verse. Last two verses were very important. Definitely, if possible, you should memorize. Similarly, verse number 9 is also a very important verse. That is often quoted, should be memorized. So let me recite it. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mameti so Arjuna. Translation: one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So here Krishna is giving that indication uh, that, well, my birth and my activities, they might appear like ordinary, just like Prabhu was mentioning. Right? How do we know someone is great? Um, so, though Krishna is acting on a material platform and apparently is taking a birth, but one of those, the devotees, they have the understanding and realization that his birth and activities are not divine, they're not ordinary. And one who have that realization and will bring about a drastic change in his purpose of life and living style, and then he will work on reviving one's relationship with Krishna, understanding that he is not an ordinary person. So for such living entities who have that correct realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that his birth and activities are not ordinary, they are divine, and it transforms his life. as per that realization, upon the death of one's body, that such devotees, they do not take birth again. Instead, they go back to the spiritual world. So here's Krishna is indicating then. So Janma, by birth, Krishna is divine. Is Karma, by his work, is by birth and by work, is divine, is transcendental. Evam yaha vetti, one who knows this, tattvataha, in reality, full realization. Having then tekta deham, when he gives up his own body, he does not come back, does not take another birth in this material world. And mameti, so Arjuna, he attends my nature, my abode. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the 6th verse. So we already discussed that in the prior verse. So what is the 6th verse? Right? 6th verse was Yada yada hi adharmasya glanirabhavati bharata abhyuthamana dharmasya tadatmanam srijamyam. So wherever and whenever there is a decline in religion, I appear. One, so the Lord is appearing by his own sweet will, right? And then he feels when things are, getting out of control over here, in the sense, then he comes specifically to give joy to his devotees and annihilate the miscreants. So we discussed that. Unlike, so that is the reason for Lord's appearance. And what is the reason for our appearance? Well, we are forced to take birth. We don't appear by our own choice. So especially in the Western countries, we have this idea of freedom of choice, right? Everyone should have that freedom to do what they like. So we try to imagine different kind of freedoms, but actually we are fully under the control of the strict laws of the material nature. For instance, we don't have a choice of in which family we're going to take birth, whether you want to get a male body or a female body, whether we'll have a healthy body or a deformed body by birth. Some defect might be there sometimes. So we are forced to we don't have any real freedom. So our birth is not by our choice. Krishna's birth is not like that. He appears by his choice. We discussed this earlier. How he appeared? Well, he did not. He was not impregnated by seminal discharge. Right? We discussed that earlier. So first he appeared in the heart of Vasudev. And Krishna's name is Vasudev. Vasudev means one who appears in Vasudev. Vasudev means mind which is clean, is not full, does not have any tinge of impurities, in mode of goodness. So when our heart is clean, the Lord appears. That's the first lesson. And from the heart of Vasudev, the Lord was transferred, right, into the body of Devaki, in the womb of Devaki. And then when the Lord appeared, first he appears as a Narayana, 400 forms, to show that he am not an ordinary personality. And then it assumes the form of a baby, and the baby is already, a baby is fully covered with beautiful clothes, ornaments, right? So it's not like in other living entities like us. We are forced to take birth. We are not born with clothes and ornaments. It's not possible. So the Lord birth is divine. Even in the way the Lord appears and the purpose for which the Lord appears is divine. Those who have discrimination, they can understand. I've given this example earlier. When Lord appears in the material plane doesn't mean that is implicated or is affected or is under the control of the modes of nature. A jailer might enter a cell in order to investigate a criminal, and he might ask the gatekeeper that, hey, I'm going to walk into the cell, open the gate, and I go in, close the gate. Someone does not, and if especially if that the jailer is not wearing his official uniform, then those who don't know, they might think, oh, this two there are two prisoners inside the cell. You cannot make that distinction. But there is a difference. The jailer went in by his own choice, and the agents who let him go, they are acting under his command. And then they will, he can come out at his own will. And then the gatekeeper are there to obey his command, right? So there could be, other analogies that we could come up with. But yeah, so the birth of the Lord is not ordinary. So one who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage. So unless one has real realization, one cannot make that distinction. I think, well, Krishna is just like anyone else. But those who have realization, then they are, the real realization means it's not just theoretically knowing, because the scripture is saying, but then one has a realization, one transforms his life when he understands there are different types of personalities, and there's a difference between my birth and activities and that of the Lord. So then when the transformation happens based on that premise, or based on, not premise, but based on that realization, then one is on the path of liberation. Such liberation of living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. So we see in the yogis and impersonalists, they have to go through so much trouble. The yogis, they are performing impossible to perform austerities and yogic practices, which we can't even imagine in this age. The impersonalists, they are engaged in cultivating knowledge by detailed understanding of the scriptures. Their idea is the Lord is impersonal. They cannot engage in, and so everything is mithya. The whole world is an illusion. They cannot find any positive engagement in this world, and so it's very dull, dry, and very austere, monastic kind of path without much rasa. Rasa means exchange of mellows and emotions. That is only available in the process of bhakti. When you understand that the Lord is a person and he is a transcendental personality, a supreme personality, we have a relationship with him, and the process of bhakti is very enjoyable, very loving, and it gives pleasure right from the beginning. But the path of jnana, yoga, very dull, dry, very austere, very difficult. And even on achieving success, which is not possible for most people, that is also not everlasting, because the bliss is not there, right? We did this example many times, that the absolute truth is manifested into three forms, right? Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So Brahman is Sat, is eternal, but there is no knowledge in Brahman. Brahman, the impersonal effulgence from the Lord's body, is a manifestation of Krishna energy, but there is no knowledge that is existing, except that the light is eternally existing. So there is truth, something that is eternal is true. But the Paramatma is not only eternal, but also has knowledge. But the Paramatma, he knows everything, the past, present, future of all living entities, present in every atom, is present as Paramatma in every living entity along with the Atman. It's full of knowledge, but then he is neutral. He is not implicated in the emotions and the karma of the living entity. He's just an observer. And so there is no mallows in the Paramatma realization. There is no Anand. The yogis, they are trying to achieve the Paramatma realization. The impersonally, they are trying to achieve the Brahman realization. But there is no bliss. The bliss is there in the Bhagavan realization, which is Satta, Chitta, Ananda, Vigraha. Vigraha means it's a form, first of all. And it is full of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. All three are present. And the Paramatma realization, only the truth and knowledge is present. There is no bliss. And so it is much troublesome. Without bliss, it's a difficult process. And even after liberation, when they achieve impersonal Brahman Jyoti, it's a partial realization. And there is a risk of returning to this material world, because one gets bored. The Brahma lean, that means the soul is it becomes one of the particles in this effulgence. Brahma Jyoti effulgence is coming from the body of the Lord. But because there is no active engagement, okay, one is free now from all the pangs of material world, the threefold miseries, Adi Devik, Adi Bhautik, Adi Atmik, miseries of our own mind, miseries brought upon us by natural calamities, and then other living entities troubling us. One is free from birth, old age, disease, and death. But then there is no positive engagement. So there is a relief that there is no other troubles. But then people get bored. And the soul, because soul by nature is Satchit Ananda. The Brahman, it doesn't find any Ananda. So you're like, okay, I need some engagement. And so because it doesn't have the higher realization that this effulgence, what is the source of this Brahma Jyoti? And the realization is not there, then one has to complete his spiritual journey. For that, one has to come down to the material plane. So, but the devotee, by understanding the transcendental nature of the Lord, transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending his body, and does not run the risk of returning to this material world. So that is the difference. The process of devotional service is blissful from the beginning. One can start experiencing the bliss even in the stage of sadhana bhakti. And then one achieves one's original rupa, swarupa, as a resident of the spiritual world. So in the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the Lord has many incarnations, right? So this is famous word. Advaita Achyutam Anadi Ananta Rupam. Nana Avatar Akarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Bhagavan Apumanayo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamam Bhajami. So Advaitam, one who is without any dualities. Then there is no difference between, there is no dvait, there is no duality, there is no difference between the Lord and his body. Achyutam is infallible, it does not fall down. He is not Chuta. Chuta means to fall down. Achyuta does not fall down. He avatar, that means he descends. Falling, there's a difference between falling down and descending. I might, like the condominium in Miami, it collapsed, right? Earlier, I mean, somebody on that 10th floor or whatever, however high that was, you would take an elevator to come down. So one descends in an elevator is not, it is different from falling down. When they say the condominium collapsed, people fell down. So there's a difference between falling down and descending. So when Lord comes on this plane, he's not falling down like the living entity falls down. The Lord descends, avatar. So it's a different word. Anadi, the Lord does not have any beginning. Ananta Rupam. Ananta has multifarious forms. So though the Lord has a form, right? Satchidananda Vigraha, immediately people might think, oh, he's limited by the form now, you see? And that's why people, they don't want to accept that the absolute truth can be a person. How can the unlimited Lord be limited by a form? Now he's limited. He's within that locus, within that space. That is his. But isn't the Lord supposed to be unlimited? And so it's very difficult for people to accept that supreme truth can be a person. Also, personality brings them the idea that, well, a person, that means he is, he must have anger and emotions and happiness and distress, and of course the Lord might manifest all those qualities, but they are not of material nature. The Lord's anger. Nrsimhadev was very angry. That means he doesn't mean he's overpowered by anger. When we become angry, we learned in the end of second chapter what happens. Why does anger happen? When the material desires are not fulfilled, one gets frustrated. And out of frustration, one is overcome by anger. And the Lord and his pure devotees, they are not overcome by anger. They might manifest anger, when means anger is fully under control of them. It's a different, but they feel that there are occasions where by demonstrating their anger, it can bring about a particular reaction or a result on the on the party, on the other hand, who is experiencing that form of the Lord. But here, Ananta Rupa means though he has a form, he is not limited by the form. He can manifest unlimited forms. Not only in terms of different incarnation, but the same form of the Lord, he can expand, which is prakas. Prakas means reflection. When you go in the mirror, the reflection is exactly looks like me, right? And so Krishna, when he expanded into 16,108 forms, because he had 16,108 queens. So he's not limited. Oh, Krishna, one person, how he can take care of 16,000 wives? An ordinary person cannot. So his activities are divine. Sometimes people have more than one wives. Well, what's an ordinary person nowadays is not even allowed by law, but in the bygone ages when people used to have, again, they are limited. Maybe how many? You might have 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe there's some some cases could be well over 100. Right? Some of the kings, Maharaj Dashrath, he had more than 100 wives. But Maharaj Dashrath could not expand himself into 100 forms. It was not always possible for him to keep all of them happy, right? Like we saw Kaikeyi, right? She, in order to keep her happy, the Lord had to make a big, Dashrath had to make a big sacrifice. He had to give up his beloved son Rama. He was a great devotee of Lord Rama, of course. But Krishna is not limited. He expanded himself into 16,108 forms. No one can do that. So his activities, are not ordinary. As a child, 7 years old, he lifted Govardhan Hill on the tip of his pinky finger of his left hand, and he held it up for 7 days and 7 nights. No one can perform those activities. So although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ananta Rupam. They're all transcendental forms, not limited by the form. Those forms are the same potency as the original form. So one has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. So when somebody might read this description, he says this must be just some stories. Because the academic scholars, they don't have much faith in such descriptions, because this makes no sense. I've never experienced anything in my life, right? Especially empiric philosopher, the empiricism, the idea of that is that, well, I accept what I see, what I experience, then that's what I consider it as a truth. And now empiricism has value. It doesn't mean that, it's a completely bogus idea. But the idea that this is the only way, or this is the absolute way one can realize truth, that is false. The senses, what I see, I feel, I taste, I touch, has its own limitations. We do rely on that, and we should continue to do that on daily basis. Suppose I'm sitting over here, there's some commotion outside or a blast, like, I rely on the sense of hearing. Okay, this looks like some danger. Let me go and check what's happening. It's not that we give that up, but at the same, we have the realization there is limitation to this. Well, I can only hear certain frequencies of sound. So if I conclude that, hey, because I cannot hear certain other frequencies which the bats can hear, or other creatures can hear, I reject them. Well, that does not exist. Like the dolphins and the whales, they communicate at a different frequency, which we don't have any access to it. And so we don't have access to that sense perception. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So there are limitations. Taste also, I mean, sometimes the sense of taste can be perverted. Like water naturally is not sweet tasting, but if you had amla, the Indian gooseberry, all of us might have experienced going in India when you eat amla, and then you drink water, the water just appears so sweet. It tastes so sweet. Water is not sweet. Now, if you conclude that water has now this is a special water, or this water is sweet. It's a wrong conclusion. Similarly, with our sight, it has its own limitation. We cannot. That's why we use microscopes and glasses and telescopes. Because the eyes are imperfect. And then there is other spectrum of the X-rays and the gamma rays, and there are so many other rays which the eyes cannot. Infrared. You need separate machines which can scan infrared, but and those machines also have their own limitations. Any machine that you buy has specification. This is the range in which this machine will operate. It cannot go beyond that range. So this machine, they are extending the capabilities of our senses, and so they are extended senses in that sense. But then those machines also run into limitation, right? So empiricism cannot determine absolute truth. Mundane scholars I mean, scholarship and application of intelligence can only take us so much. That doesn't mean that we give up intelligence at all. But we understand that there's we should use our intelligence. We should not give up. That's not we otherwise we become blind followers. So that's not the idea. But the idea is that to understand limitations of the other processes, and then one has to go to Sabda Praman, and Sabda Praman means it's not something unnatural. Actually, it's very natural. Sabda Praman means you accept the truth from someone who has realized the truth. Then how do you know that person has realized the truth? That means you have to trust that person. And then how does the trust comes? You don't sit together and you try to determine if do I trust this person. One might not go through a conscious exercise, but what would happen is over course of time, by interacting with a certain individual, the trust develops. Sometimes the trust could be misplaced. So that depends on our sincerity. Just to give an example, like the child says, I'm going to learn everything on my own. That's not possible. The child learns things naturally from their parents. The child might, Harilas Maharaj gives this example many times. The child is growing up and he would ask his parents, ye kya hai? And then, he says, Raju asks, ye kya hai? And his father will say, ye pen hai. This is a pen. And the child accepts it, right? And this simple thing. But what is it? The child basically trusts their parents. Why? Because right from the birth, my parents have brought me up. They're taking good care of me. They're taking care of my needs. And, the trust naturally develops. Just like in science, they have this idea that when we do any test, you want to do an experiment, and the experiment should be reproducible. That means that the same result should happen consistently over a period of time. Then that result is statistically significant. And when the result is statistically significant, it means there's a difference between the control group and the variant group, which is getting a treatment. There are sufficient samples in each of the groups. And then you see there is a difference in the result. Then you can conclude that, hey, there is, by doing A, the B will happen. So the similar idea, I mean, the child is not doing statistical analysis, but by repeated, consistent experience, that conviction comes and you start developing the trust. Similarly, as adults, we develop trust for certain individuals because of our past experiences with those individuals, and we begin to trust them. And it is all happening subconsciously. And over a period of time, when we see that consistent experience of certain personality, that this person is an honest, is kind, this person has my good interest in mind, then we naturally start building a trust, and then we are keen to learn and hear from them. Just like same principle is applied in marketing, right? You have reviews. Now everybody reviews from so many people, but if it is a verified purchase on Amazon, oh, this is a person who has actually bought it and is commenting and giving a review, not that somebody just randomly doing it. So there is a higher level of trust. And then you see, oh, 5,000 people have given a review of 4.5. And then you feel like, okay, more people, so must be valid. Now you can still run into trouble in the sense that you see there are so many bogus gurus, and they might have thousands of followers. But if you have a friend, you say, oh, no, my friend, the person whom you trust, the person whom you know. Now this review is coming from a friend. You say, oh, this person is honest. He's always sincere. He's not someone who can get cheated. Some people, they get cheated because they are interested in getting cheated. That means they are not sincere. And then you get a review from someone who is, no, this person is sincere. He must have acted out. And so when you hear from, such a person, and then you have more faith in that review. And then by your own direct experience, there is a gradation, and then you direct experience, and then you see, oh, now people can still get cheated. Why? Because if they are themselves not sincere, suppose they want cheap fame, or like, okay, everyone has a guru, I also need to have a guru. This looks like a popular guru. All the people who are going in that circle, becoming disciple of this guru, looks like they're all wealthy people. Maybe I'll get opportunity. It all happening subconsciously. I can get, I can have good social influence, ulterior reasons. And then they might accept someone who is a bogus guru, for instance. And you can, and then eventually they realize, oh, this guru is also bogus, and they might repent, apparently, but they were never themselves sincere to begin with. So unless somebody wants to be cheated, they cannot be cheated. Suppose if I say I want to go to the gold shop, and then you can say I got cheated by this person who did not sell me pure gold. It's some kind of alloy, and it's not my fault. And they might say, but actually, why were they attracted? Because this person promised, oh, I'm going to give you at such a cheap rate, right? That means that person is not sincere. He's not willing to pay the full price. If he wants pure gold, then he have to pay full price. But he was attracted by a fake merchant, a bogus merchant, because he wanted it cheap. He wanted to buy something cheaply, or did not do due diligence, do research. If he or learn from someone who knows. So any example of people getting cheated is because they have not done their due diligence, they are not sincere, and that often happens. They're not invested the time, effort, energy. So anyway, coming back to how do you know someone is genuine or bona fide? Well, we have to see, first of all, are we sincere in our purpose? And then by our experience with that personality, we begin to repeated, consistent experience. If we are sincere, then, and when we analyze someone and we associate, we develop that faith by that consistent experience. Then we start listening. Now, when we start listening, that's where the application of intelligence comes. We don't have to give up intelligence. Like Arjuna has not given up intelligence. He's asking Krishna, hey, what you say does not make sense. What do you mean, sun god? You instructed this to sun god. Sun god appeared millions of years ago. So he's not blindly accepting it. He's not given up his intelligence. So sometimes people think, oh, religion and spirituality means you have to give up your intelligence. You just accept. That's not the case. But the case is the other way. Why we have liberals and conservatives? They are their own versions of truth, almost like they live in completely different worlds. So first they have developed faith. And then within that, when that faith is developed, they are willing to listen from the sources that they trust. And when they listen, then they do apply their intelligence. Even these conspiracy theories, they come, they could be very intricate. They will say, oh, this is the proof. This is what happened. This person said, this is what we observed. They will be able to logically explain. So the logic, it's not that logic does not have any place, but the thing is, intelligence, rationality does not trump. Right? Rationality does not sit above emotions. And the first thing is ado shraddha. The first thing is faith. And now once that faith is there, then you listen to that person, and then one applies one's intelligence to see if this makes sense or not. Take any field of knowledge. If somebody goes to school to learn science, unless one has faith in the teacher or whatever teacher says, this teacher is from school that is authorized, the teacher has the credentials, and is backed by knowledge. When one has Adav Shraddha, okay, the basic premise is that, okay, whatever teacher says is correct. Maybe I'm not able to understand it. Let me ask. And you ask questions and counter questions. So without faith, one cannot even begin any form of knowledge. Even one has to learn science. The child, right from the beginning, if he's just questioning, say, how do I know if it's true? You cannot even live, right? Say, how do I know if the food that was given to me is not poisoned? I'm not going to eat, right? What if I step and the condominium falls down, or the earth, falls apart? What if I step out and the air is polluted? When you start doubting everything, you cannot demand proof, right? So the whole world works on the initial Adav Shraddha. So there is some initial faith required, and then you apply your intelligence and see if it makes sense. If not makes sense, you ask counter question. If it's completely bogus, you reject it. But it has to begin at the platform of faith. Otherwise, and whom do you trust? Well, that depends on your own values. And if your values are sincerity, if one is sincere, then you won't be cheated. You won't be attracted to people. You won't put your faith in people who are bogus. If we ourselves are not bogus, you have to really see and ask us how sincere we are in our process. So in this way, one can achieve, or one can find out what the truth is. People generally put rationality on top, but rationality doesn't sit on the top. The first thing, consciously or unconsciously, starts from faith, and faith is not blind faith for most people. That faith is based on their experience and validation in association with other personalities. Now, that association could be wrong if their own values are not correct. And these values are not about necessarily what you learn, but we inherit certain values and sincerity. Sincerity of purpose. When there is sincerity in ourselves, that is something that is innate. And we can develop. It doesn't need any external help. So anyway, I think I spoke a lot. The verse is still, I think, is an important point. Maybe we can see. Let me see if we can conclude this in 5 minutes. Okay. So, yeah, the Supreme Personality of God is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationship with unalloyed devotees. So there's a relationship between devotees and the Lord, and the Lord has a form. The Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who does not waste time in philosophical speculation, attains the highest perfectional stage of life. So what is philosophical speculation? Like Greek philosophers. You sit and you observe the world and you try to determine and debate, and maybe it's like that, maybe it's like that. So one might get some glimpse of truth. One cannot come to the stage of highest stage of liberation by that kind of philosophical speculation, because just like senses are limited, mind and intelligence are also limited instruments. There's only so much it can take us to. The knowledge, perfect knowledge, can only be known from people who have it, and when they pass on to you, then you can use one's intelligence. So the proper use of intelligence is not speculating. Proper use of intelligence is trying to analyze and understand logically the truth which is provided by those who know the truth, right? So it's intelligence has a purpose, but it is secondary to learning from someone who knows. And even if somebody wants to become a surgeon, one cannot start from scratch and say, it might take a long process, right? But if you go to a medical school and learn, who already knows surgery, you learn from them, and then you can learn faster. Then you apply your intelligence. Why is it like that? Why not this? The intelligence has a purpose, but then you have to learn from someone who knows. And how do you know someone who knows? Well, if you're sincere, then you will find a genuine person. One's not sincere, then you'll end up with someone who is bogus. So simply by accepting this truth on faith, Adav Shraddha, that's where you begin. And do you trust the speaker? Do you trust Krishna? Right? That depends on your values and your sincerity. If you're sincere, then you can see this is who is real. The Vedic version, Tattvam Asi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Krishna to be supreme, or who says unto the Lord, you are the same Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead. So, Tattvam Asi, the literal meaning of that is, to understand the personality of Godhead, that this personality is actually the source of the Brahman, the effulgence. Because you see, generally, this version we find in Upanishads or the Vedas, which, many times they are written in an impersonal kind of language. There's no description of personality directly. But one who has understanding of Bhagavad Gita, one who understands Lord Krishna, they understand the real import of this verse. Because Vedesu Durlabham, the purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, but just by the Vedic knowledge in itself, one cannot come to the right conclusion. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedesya sarve rahameva vedya, the purpose of the Vedas is to know me. So, such a person who has that understanding is liberated instantly, and he is granted association of the Lord in the spiritual world. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection. This is confirmed. In other words, this is from Sveta Swattara Upanishad. One can attain perfect stage of liberation from death, birth and death, simply by knowing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no other way to achieve perfection. So one has to understand who the Lord is, how great He is, why is He great. So we discuss this in much more detail. There is no alternative means that anyone who does. There is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not be able to attain salvation. Simply. So to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey, or by interpreting Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. So if we try to use philosophical speculation on mundane scholarship, and we apply that to understanding Bhagavad Gita, that's a futile attempt. Because just like a honey bee is trying to lick the surface of the bottle of honey, but unless one dives into the honey, you cannot experience. So the academic scholars, they will understand, they analyze the tradition. Oh, this is the tradition. This is how they do things. Just like, I don't see so much here in Seattle, but other places I live. Many times we have students who take world religion, class on world religion. They come to the temple and they have a set of questions. Maybe it's part of their homework, or maybe they're curious. I don't know, but many times it's part of their homework. And they come and they will ask specific questions. Why you worship this plant? Why you worship this tulsi? And they will make notes and they analyze, what is happening, why is it happening, and the song is being sung. We sing Tulsi Aarti, for instance, but they don't dive into it. They're just trying to analyze academically. But if anyone who hears Tulsi Aarti is such a beautiful, and when he's not constrained by all these academic parameters, even if he doesn't understand the language, the raga, any music, when a child listens to music, even if it doesn't understand the language, you can see, this is a happy music, sad music, is it a music in lamentation? So all those bhavas, they are naturally understood, just like no one has to teach you that this is the feeling of a sour taste. That is already, it's experienced naturally. The senses, if you see color, shape, no one has to teach. They might have to teach us the name of the color, but the experience of the color comes naturally. Similarly, experience of the song comes naturally. Just by listening to that song, one can experience devotion. But one is so constrained in that academic perspective that they don't experience, even while they are in their environment. And so, that mundane approach of scholarship, one cannot realize the absolute truth. On the other hand, you might be an illiterate person, but one is open, one is willing to experience what is in the environment just by listening to these spiritual songs. They can be transformed. They can realize and feel the emotions. So that's the one has to see. One is really sincere. Are you interested in completing my homework, submitting a assignment for world region class, or I really want to experience spirituality, right? So you have to see where the what our values are or how sincere we are. So that illiterate person might not able to explain in detail because he's not asking academic questions, but he has experienced spirituality. On the other hand, the other person might have a detailed essay saying he can explain what is happening, why is it happening, but he has no experience, cannot no entrance to the realm of spirituality. So that is the position of empiric philosophers and academic scholars. They assume very important roles in material world. They talk in sophisticated language, but they're not eligible. They don't have any experience of spirituality and no experience. Definitely not eligible for liberation. They might be very puffed up, but they have to wait. I mean, everyone is eventually has access as soon as they become sincere or they wait for causeless mercy. When they come across a devotee and they have genuine experience. This person is kind, is humble, and this person is very different. He doesn't have things that I have, but I can see that this person's happy, is self-realized, does not get disturbed. And we're curious, like, what is the cause of this? Maybe this has something that I don't have. And so when they get that mercy and association, when they're willing to have that, then even they can take up. Anyone can take up devotional service because that is our original nature. It's not a matter of converting one from one religion to another, from atheism to theism, but we are all part and parcel of Krishna. That means we are all devotees. We have forgotten it. It's like we are covered with dirt, and it's such a thick layer that it's when you put into a spiritual environment, is not imbibed, right, immediately, because it has to pass through this impermeable layer of impurities. But as soon as we make ourselves open and sincere, and we remove our coverings, then anyone can take it up. That is our nature. So we'll discuss that. That comes in subsequent verses that Krishna tells Arjuna, well, many have achieved perfection in the past. You can also achieve it. So we'll talk about that. I think we're already about time. We'll conclude the class. If there are any questions, quick questions, comments, I can take that right now. Good.
Jamin bhai, I have one question.
Yes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jamin bhai. Basically, I mean, since a long time, I'm just from like my experience, I'm trying that to be understand more details on Bhagavad Gita by reading by all other means, and then to try to go more close to the God. But then, I mean, but I mean, when we are stuck with a lot of activities, uh, I mean, with society and a lot of other things. So, I mean, sometimes it's you're always go and get into the material part of the situation. I mean, either it's work or it's your personal life or anywhere else, and then the as you say that we should live in Krishna consciousness, but uh, I mean that is a very thin line, and many times you don't realize that you are standing at which side of the net, right? And then the time goes by. I mean, it's so fast, so that time doesn't stop for anyone. So how, I mean, how basically we can, what we can do so that we are more conscious about situations are happening, and you're more into state of liberation. So I mean, I'm always curious and confused about it.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, a practical question. It's a challenge everyone faces. So, as you talked about in this verse, that okay, by reading Bhagavad Gita, it's important. We should read. but then we have to experience it, and it means we have to surcharge ourselves by being in an environment where that devotion and spirituality is there. And for that purpose, we have to augment our study of Bhagavad Gita with association with devotees of Krishna who are sincere, who are practicing, and you have to start somewhere. You might be a weekly association for an hour, that might increase slowly for maybe more than 1 hour, and then you might be able to adjust your life slowly, gradually, organically, where you can make friends within a spiritual community. You can associate with them on more frequent basis, and then you start from zero, and then eventually that zero might become 10, 15, 20. And there are individuals, depending on their life situation and their journey, they sometimes make changes organically, again nothing drastic, in a natural way, where they adjust their life. So they might have the regular job, and then they would associate in the evenings, or maybe once a week or more, but eventually they might be able to change their work where they have more opportunity. Maybe you work, it's not always possible for everyone, but maybe you work in a place which there are already devotees in the workplace, and then maybe at a lunch break you convene. So throughout the day you have all these small moments. Sometimes people who are entrepreneurs, they start their own business, getting in a association with other devotees. That might not happen eventually, earlier, but eventually it might happen at an appropriate time. Or as people grow up and they feel, well, earlier we might have, I want to save $2 million, because that's what you need when you retire. But then you realize, hey, I don't need a fancy home when I'm old. I can downsize. I really don't need so much money. And not artificially, but you will naturally have those realization over a period of time, and you can live simply. Then you might feel, oh, it's possible for me to take early retirement. Maybe I'll retire, go to Vrindavan, Mayapur, or another community where devotees are staying. I don't need a fancy place with minimal needs. So, or it's slowly over a period of time, you can increase your opportunities and abilities to live in association of devotees. And in either case, even when we live in association of the devotees, or we are in the association of those who are not devotees, of course, it's better to be in the association of devotees as much as possible, and we should try. But the application of intelligence, the proper application of intelligence, comes after we coming to what is truth. And we have to analyze the truth and also apply and put an endeavor, because the nature of the conditioned state is that we bring our material consciousness even to spirituality, and that becomes a great hindrance in making genuine spiritual progress. So one might come to a conclusion that I should only take honor prasadam, not, and then one might change their lifestyle by saying, I'm going to only accept prasadam, nothing else, which is a significant change. But if the consciousness is not change, and it requires the time, so you have to constantly apply. When I'm honoring prasadam, I'm honoring and meditating that this is a remnants of the food that is offered to Krishna, right? And so I'm taking a humble, lowly position, right? It's for and then when I imbibe in that mood, I'm making spiritual progress. Otherwise the tendency might be, I'm the enjoyer. Oh, this is such a nice food that was prepared, and I feast on it. In terms of enjoying as a bhoga, then we are not making so much spiritual progress. So even after moving into an association of devotees and a community, if the consciousness has to be constantly applied, so that's why Prabhupada called it Krishna consciousness. It's an effort that we have to constantly put in. It doesn't come natural to us, because the nature of the senses is sense enjoyment, because we have this material body. So they will do their part, and we have to constantly reinforce that mentality. The two common problems that constant, even after taking spirituality, that might happen, or might happen even more, just like when you're raising bhakti lata, the devotional creeper, You have to make sure that weeds are not taking up the nutrition. The weeds are taking up the nutrition, and bhakti won't grow. So all the anarthas might start developing. Then we might start to seek fame and prestige. Or then, when we are taking up the process initially, we are very humble. Oh, I just want prasadam, and I just want to be able to honor it. And then one might think, oh, everyone's making nice preparations. Let me become a good cook. And he says, oh, now I can make such nice bhoga for Krishna. You become proud. I can make better bhoga than others, and you kind of get into competition with other devotees. And other hand, you want to enjoy instead of thinking really that, oh, this is just the remnants that I am honoring. You think, oh, I want to take this. Why I'm doing so much services? Why I did not get this prasadam? You gave it to other person. He's not even doing services. Or I prepared it for the Lord. I should get bhoga. I should get the prasad more, right? So all these subtle things can develop, so that the conditioned soul, even after taking spirituality, and just give you example of cooking. Same thing can apply to scriptures. Earlier, you might say, oh, when you are initially taking the process, you are learning Bhagavad Gita, so you can apply in your life. Then you might think, oh, now I have read it. Now I want to become a scholar. How I can give better classes than others? How many verses I can memorize? So then there is a deviation. And then you think you read so that how it satisfies me, right? You get some sort of enjoyment. It's not a grossly sinful, but at a subtle level, it's still, if you try to think by amassing knowledge, I'm going to get fame and reputation. I want to be able to do it better than others. I want to show that I'm better than others in this. And so, those two tendencies, one to show that I'm better than others, and I'm the controller, and to enjoy any field, or somebody's playing music, doing kirtan for the Lord, right? Earlier one is very sincere, is experiencing, but then by the other the weeds might start developing. And then two things can happen. Well, music, or this is for my enjoyment. Instead of, you have to constantly think, it's not for my enjoyment, it is for Krishna's enjoyment. Or you think, oh, I'm going to attend kirtan today. You're going to have 2 hours of kirtan, and you say, oh, this Prabhu, wo tal bajao, ye rag mein gao, and you think, oh, this is like a musical performance, and you feel, oh, this is such a nice to hear that music. So we are not getting spiritual bliss. We are imagining that this is spiritual bliss, and we have to constantly think, oh, this is glorification of Krishna. It's for Krishna's enjoyment, and that's why we become happy, as opposed to thinking, oh, this is nice music, I'm going to enjoy. And the other challenge is, I should learn music. And when you learn music, now I want to be a better musician than others. Oh, he's able to sing this, I want to sing this raga, I want to play this harmonium tune, or this mridanga tal, and I want to show I'm a better mridanga player than others. There are two things you have to constantly guard against. Again, this goes back to the principle of sincerity. Why did I come over here? Did I to become realize my original position as a pure like a devotee and a servant of Krishna? If not, then we will get trapped into these trappings, where we are going through the motions of devotional services in a ritualistic way, but we are just trying to satisfy our ego. So to answer your question, it was a long answer, but the challenge does not go away. Right now, you're saying I don't have much devotee association, and you should have, and you should try to slowly, organically cultivate that. But once you have that, it's your challenges probably would take a different flavor. And so to answer your question is, every moment you have to put an effort. Every single moment you have to ask, am I sincere in my purpose? What am I seeking? You have to seek genuine service and devotion to Krishna, and avoid the two main challenges, that my own enjoyment, so your working senses and knowledge acquiring senses. So the tendency of the knowledge acquiring senses is to gratify themselves. This is for my enjoyment. And the challenge of the working senses is to prove that I am better than others. So these challenges will always, because of the nature of the senses, they will kind of drag the soul. That force is there constantly, drag it down even in a spiritual environment. And so you have to constantly guard against the demands of the knowledge acquiring senses and the working senses. Working senses want to prove themselves better than others. Knowledge acquiring senses, they want to gratify their own senses. Just like people go to have darshan. Look at, oh, Lord is dressed so nicely, so beautifully. It's so pleasing to my eyes. That's not darshan. Darshan means Lord is pleased to see us by our devotion. He say, oh, this person is sincere, he's trying to serve me, and the Lord is happy to see us. And so we want to present ourselves to the Lord, and Lord might get pleasure by seeing me. Otherwise, we see, oh, this decoration is so nice. Oh, today this Prabhu did not do good decoration. It doesn't look so good. It's not pleasing to my eyes. And it could be very subtle. When we start looking at the deity, thinking the dressing of the deity is for my enjoyment, then that's just materiality, right? So this could go very subtle. So it's a long answer. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, it's a real problem, and the problem does not magically go away. You'll have to constantly endeavor to overcome it every moment of your life. I think that's all I can say.
Thanks. I will try to. I mean, I'm definitely trying, but I will try more to look into that direction and
Right.
see how it is progressing. But yes, it's. I mean, it's not something like immediately happens, but yes, it's a process. So it will take its own time. So yeah, hopefully, I'm able to get the right path and
Yeah, the main
constant touch.
point is
Yeah,
sincere in our endeavor.
yeah.
And everything else will fall into place. The sincerity is the key thing, not the intelligence, not other abilities, but sincerity in purpose.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, just to say, I mean, sometimes basically, uh, I mean, not, I mean, you need a car, not required that you need a Mercedes or you need a BM
Yeah,
or Audi, but you need a car. I mean, that's a basic requirement. So you can settle that with maybe small amount. No need to go with the hefty price and then big
yeah,
loans. We can do it,
exactly.
and then the remaining amount, maybe you can. I mean, if you have do, let's say you saved something over there, so then you can use it for some good purpose. So I mean, but then I mean, sometimes I always think that. When I want to help somebody, I need some time and money. These two are the important things. I mean, you can give someone time or you can give someone money to help, either it's education, whether it is a health wise issue or anything. So many times I mean, I need to be competitive in my work, because if I'm not competitive or if I'm not performing, then I will not get what I mean desire. But that desire is again not for me, but I mean, somehow in back of mind we think that if I get more, maybe I can help somebody more. So that time, uh, there is something that you are still thinking for the result. I mean, not like that you don't think about result, because that result will help me to move to the next stage or do something else. But
Right.
that's where, I mean, I get confused that if you are thinking about the results or if you are thinking about the outcome, then you are not following the right path. But
But that's not
yeah,
what the case is, right? We already discussed that in the previous
yeah,
chapter.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not. Arjuna was thinking about success, but it's it's not for our own. It's a sacrifice. The whole idea of sacrifice is what, right? We are not. The fruitive mentality means that we don't want for our enjoyment. That doesn't mean we don't want success. But the idea that I am not the enjoyer, that means you offer everything as in sacrifice for satisfaction of Vishnu. You look your at family member that they are part and parcels of Krishna. They are devotees of Krishna. I have to serve them. And so in this way, when we see everything in connection to Krishna, and then we serve with that mentality, then and not for our own enjoyment, then all of that becomes perfect, and none of that is in vain. So hope
Yep.
that clarifies it.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I think we are already way above our time, but is there any more other questions we could take up next time, or you can feel to reach out to me offline? I think if it's all right, we'll conclude the class. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.